And today we're really banking on the views today because we are talking about one of the most influential bands of all time, the Beatles. Yes, regarded as one of the most influential musical groups of all time, the Beatles were an English rock band formed in Liverpool in 1960. This comprised of John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison and Ringo Starr. For some of music's biggest stars, it's strange for them to make such an admission so many years later after they were a band. Paul McCartney had a 60 Minutes interview in 2018 where he admitted that neither he nor any of his Beatles bandmates were able to read or write music, and they never understood music theory. It's embarrassing. I don't read or write music. None of us did in the Beatles. We did some good stuff though, and none of it was written down by us. It's basically notation. That's the bit I can't do because I don't see music as dots on a page. It's something in my head that goes on. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say that this is a completely abnormal thing to say, based on the fact that I too don't understand music theory. Who am I to say whether he's right or wrong? But, if you want my opinion, maybe breaking the norm was actually a good thing, and that might have been partly the reason why the Beatles might have gone absolutely stratospheric compared to many artists of the day. All it really takes is for someone to take a bold new direction with something that a lot of people may not have even tried before, to get something truly fantastic. So I think that Paul McCartney saying this actually potentially might have some truth to it. Who knows? Maybe we could just take his word for it and just say he's completely telling the truth. Because he probably is, but it's not quite as simple as that. This has been a debate for the longest time as to whether this statement is actually true or not. Given that many experts have weighed in from either side of the topic, it's actually very difficult to know the truth in this, unless Sir Paul McCartney comments on this video and clarifies, but beggars can't be choosers. Later in their career, it might not have been quite as noticeable when they've perhaps become more established, more experienced, and certainly much more confident in their musical writing abilities. When I even searched up references and articles about this fact, there was a lot of people quote tweeting the original interview, with people that were absolutely shocked to find out that this was even a thing. You would have assumed that one of the most influential bands of all time could read and write music. I mean, it's just such an odd thing to hear. It's not really something you'd expect coming from a band like that. But who am I to say? If by self-admission they can't read or write music, did they actually understand music theory? Music theory being the knowledge of how a song should be written, arranged, and performed. This can involve a number of things, from a basic understanding of harmony, melody, and rhythm. 3 things I do not possess or have any general understanding of, but it's funny when you have a passion for music, and if you have a good ear for something that sounds good, then you can make it work. And you know what, I do sort of agree with this, that even if you don't know the ins and outs of the actual music theory, just by listening to music and having such a wide spectrum of music to listen to, you can kind of get an appreciation for something which is good and something which is bad. I mean, yes, this is a very, very opinionated thing, but there are some general tenets that you can go with, even if you can't quite put your finger on it. Things which makes a song good, shall we say. Yes, there is talent there. Even if you can't pick up on the chord structure and you can just hear it by ear, you know that perhaps that musical artist has got the X factor, which maybe some other people don't have. In order to dig into this a little bit further, maybe one good place to consider is the musical influences that the band had, with the Beatles commenting on this many, many times before. Yes, the world was influenced by the Beatles, but who influenced the Beatles? A few examples were Britain's closest thing to a rock band at the time, Cliff Richard and the Shadows, who heavily influenced the band and adopted many things from it. And of course, Bob Dylan, who would also influence the shape and the sounds of the band. Lennon himself would even go on to try and emulate a lot of his sounds as a singer and songwriter later in his career. Other influences could be found in Buddy Holly, Chuck Berry, Ravi Shankar, the Everly Brothers, Elvis Presley and Eric Clapton. And do you know what? It shows. Eric Clapton being an influence, it's just sort of a given at this point. He influenced the band so much that the band even employed him to make some of the band's most famous songs, one of which was pretty much written by Clapton, While My Guitar Gently Weeps. As a matter of fact, one of Paul McCartney's favourite tracks came from the Beach Boys of all artists, where he originally said the following: "We used to admire the singing, the high falsetto really, and the very sort of California lyrics. It was later, it was Pet Sounds that blew me out of the water. First of all, it was Brian's writing. I love the album so much. I've just bought my kids each a copy of it for their education in life. I figure no one is educated musically till they've heard that album. I was into the writing and the songs. The majority of Beatles songs were primarily written by Lennon and McCartney, but it's no lie that all four of the band members were songwriters, with George Harrison coming into the fray later on with songs like Here Comes the Sun and Something. Ringo even had input with a few song credits such as Octopus Garden. So yeah, even this self-admission is a shock to many people, even myself, not gonna lie. But when you dive into this a little bit more and look how deep some of their influences actually are, and I imagine growing up with music in such a way, I think it's pretty easy to actually pin this down and say that even though you don't understand those basic core fundamentals, if you want to be creative, maybe try something a little bit different, and maybe just trust your gut a little bit more. Maybe you don't need all this fancy knowledge of music theory when you can just make a song that sounds good. This also makes sense due to the fact that their musical talents far exceeded any grounded need to actually learn music theory. And today we're going to explore a rather unique collection of band merchandise, something that you would probably not see on most websites for artists. Kiss are a cut above the rest and decide to take things a little bit more on the wacky side. Look, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with artists making money on merchandise or other items. As a matter of fact, most artists are relying on fan support through ticket sales, merchandise, or patron services as a result of predominantly the way that streaming services pay their artists. And the only way they pay their artists is pretty much underpaid. Therefore, in my opinion, more power to them. If a band or artist wants to sell some merchandise to somebody, then why not? I mean, if you can get a t-shirt and slap a logo on it and somebody's willing to buy it, then why the hell not? You don't have to buy one, it's there for the people that want it. And that is really all that should matter. Yes, there should be no harm and no judgment in somebody buying a bit of merchandise or a t-shirt of their favourite band. I was going to get some for the artist Salt and Pepper, but they sold out unfortunately, so hence why I'm not wearing it. And yes, most merchandise comes in the forms of things like t-shirts, hoodies, CDs, and maybe even a mug. You can't stray too far from your everyday, easily producible items that you can slap any logo or image on. Cheap and affordable, which is what's good for most people running a merch line. However, if you're a band like Kiss, or anyone that's absolutely massive, you can push the boat out a little bit further and go into something a little bit more specialised, or maybe even something completely out of the realm of imagination entirely. If we're talking about Kiss merchandise, I mean, we have to start on the Kiss website, of course, where basically they have all the array of normal stuff you'd expect that a band or artist would normally sell on their website. Things like t-shirts, hoodies, badges, bandanas, basically just an entire assortment of stuff from different eras, different albums, and basically different times during their career. I mean, Kiss have been going on for years, so you expect that they're going to have a lot under their belts, which is understandable. The weird part is when you find out that, as per a Brand Week magazine article, Kiss has licensed its name against more than 3,000 different products. The simple fact of the matter is that Kiss have more pieces of merchandise and have generated more money from that merchandise than pretty much any other band in the history of music. The band entered the world of comic books in 1977, when Marvel published a magazine full-colour comic of the band. Blood from each band member was drawn by a registered nurse, witnessed by a notary public, and poured into the vats of red ink used for the printing of the comic at Marvel's ink plant in New York. And yes, this actually happened. Yes, that's one way to make art. So much so, and because of the fact that they were so popular, Kiss have basically gone on and made many different iterations of their comics through different comic publishers throughout the years, even up until this very day. Kiss even joined forces with an action figure producing company called Mego in 1978, where they made a line of superhero action figures of all the band members. Yes, even Peter Criss. Everybody was here, and if you liked them, you could get a toy of your very own. Okay, yes, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Tank, this isn't really that crazy. Yes, comic books and action figures, they aren't the most wild things out there that is being merchandised by a band. However, what I will say is that if you think about most bands and artists, not many people can say that they've got their own comic book line and action figure line, which is pretty cool. But I imagine that many people that are fans of Kiss will probably already know that this is a thing. So we have to delve even deeper into the depths to find the even more crazy stuff that the band have licensed and merchandised in the past. So, if you want something particularly strange, then how about that one time that Kiss decided to license a coffin? Yep, I ain't joking, this is an actual thing they did. From 2001 to 2006, Kiss offered a sale of a custom-made coffin emblazoned with the imagery of the band for $4,500. Donned the ultimate Kiss collectible. So much so, in fact, that Pantera legends Dimebag Darrell and Vinnie Paul are both buried inside a Kiss casket. A few years later, Kiss would even partner with a company that created memorial products, which included, of course, the Kiss caskets, and in addition to that, cremation urns, bronze memorials, memorial prayer cards, registry books, memorial candles, and pet cremation urns. All in the style and theming of Kiss. I guess the only appropriate song to play at your funeral is Burning Up Fever. Just saying. Just to reel off some of the other items in this crazy collection, include the Kiss condoms, with fitting names such as Love Gun Protection, Tongue Lubricated, and Studded Paw. The band also licensed many other random things, such as Visa cards, pinball machines, board games, video games, radios, basically anything that you can get your hands on. You want a lunchbox with Kiss on? Then you can get a lunchbox with Kiss on. Kiss would even venture into the world of beauty products in 2006, including hair-branded shampoo fragrances for him and her, with bottles of aftershave, deodorant, body wash, and shaving cream, with even more to boot. This list is by no means comprehensive, and this is pretty much just touching the surface of what there actually is. I'm sure that if you go on Google and type in some random item and then the word Kiss, you will probably find some Kiss related products, which is pretty mad. And yes, I did this with toilet paper and this came up. So yeah, Kiss branded toilet paper with Hello Kitty. Basically, if there's room to slap a Kiss logo on it, then why the hell not? Make some easy money on it and call it a day. Given the fact that they did this with condoms, the door is pretty much open for whatever the hell they want to license. So much so that many fans even criticise the band for their rampant merchandising, with people arguing that the band are using their audience to make a quick buck. Whilst it's difficult to argue against the fact that this is a cash grab, I mean, why on earth would you decide to license condoms if you weren't going to try and make some quick money off it? You know, I'm sure there's someone out there that wants to buy it, so why not sell it to them? The band themselves don't shy away from the topic. As a matter of fact, Gene Simmons is by far the biggest advocate for the practice and goes out of his way to publicly support the idea. In his book, Sex, Money, Kiss, he states, "I think it's cool to see my face on a lunchbox. It's fun. I'm doing this for me. You don't have to buy one." And do you know what? It's hard to argue with that. Yes, you can have your beliefs about the integrity of the band and what they're doing with the merchandising, but he's right. You don't have to buy one. I mean, yes, a Kiss lunchbox does exist, but you don't have to physically own one. And the sheer fact that they've managed to license so many products does indicate that for the people that don't like the practice, there are many, many more people that do. If you have a core audience and a core fan base that are willing to buy these things, then why the hell not? I mean, you could pretty much just churn out anything you wanted to, and provided it has the Kiss logo on it, and there's people that are willing to buy it, then fair play. I mean, they're fully grown adults, it's their own money, they can decide what they want to do with it, even if they want to buy Kiss branded condoms. So yeah, that is the crazy world of Kiss merchandise. And just to wrap this whole thing up, look, if you have money, life is short, spend it on what you like, make sure that you enjoy yourself, and even if you don't want to spend your money when you're alive, you could spend it on a Kiss casket when you're dead, and pretty much live out the rest of your days in a Kiss branded coffin. all for a rocking good time. And for anyone that's a long time viewer of the channel, you'll know that I do like the band Daft Punk. In my old apartment, I used to have one of their pictures in the background of my videos. Roll the clip of an old video. Yeah, those were the times. So yeah, basically, I like these guys so much that I decided to give them a spot in the house. I mean, hell, they're still up there, just out of frame at the moment, so yeah, Daft Punk. Given the relatively recent news that they were hanging up their helmets, I wanted to take a look back at the life and legacy of the duo Daft Punk. They say you should make videos about things that interest you, and damn it, that's what I'm gonna do today.
Thomas Bangalter and Guy Manuel de Homoncristo
are the actual names of the men behind the masks who created the musical duo Daft Punk. The two actually met in 1987 whilst attending secondary school in Paris. Their friendship grew when they started to share a passion for music, recording demos in the year 1992, forming a guitar group named Darlin', named after the same Beach Boys song. They made a few songs, and even though they'd signed to a London label, they disbanded 6 months later. But the duo would move on to bigger and better things when they formed Daft Punk, adopting more synth and drum machines in their music. The origin behind the name was actually from a review they received for their band Darlin', because somebody named them Daft Punky Trash. So, of course, the name Daft Punk stuck. I mean, the trash part was probably dropped for good reason, but Daft Punk was born. In 1993, the duo would start working on music, including their single Alive, and then they would look to write their very first album, Homework. On the run-up to making this album, they signed with Virgin Records and created what would be their first commercially successful single, Da Funk. They even started to perform live for the first time, without any masks at the time, but this was their roots, learning what Daft Punk was, and laying the groundwork for what we would soon know the duo to be today. The duo released their first debut album, Homework, in 1997, being dubbed in a UK dance magazine as one of the most hyped debut albums for a long, long time. Whilst the album did really well, the most recognised song on the album was, of course, Around the World. It wasn't just music either. The music video for Da Funk is also a classic in its own story-driven dogtail right. So yeah. Whilst the duo played around with the idea of having masks, this would truly be cemented with the theming of their next album, Discovery, released in 2001. The album reached number 2 in the UK, and its lead single, One More Time, being a huge hit, alongside the other singles on the album, such as Digital Love and Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger. The theming of this album, and effectively leaning into the style established now in their more robotic personas, was truly cemented here. Yeah, I mean, look at these guys. Super flashy. So flashy, in fact, that they even transcended music and were becoming big in other forms of media, including a partnership with Japanese animator Leiji Matsumoto, a name which I completely did not butcher in the slightest, to create Interstellar 5555, a feature-length animation set to the album of Discovery. These guys at this point were really pushing the envelope and really spreading their music across many different channels and media platforms, which was pretty cool. And it was also at this time in '97 that they decided to release their first live album. That album, of course, being Alive, '97. That's right, these robots were hitting the big leagues, as in 2005 they released their next album, Human After All. And yes, I admit that this album was not quite as well received as the previous album, but I don't care, this is one of my favourite albums, mainly because of the fact that they leaned a lot more into the rocky guitar side of it, which was pretty cool. I think it was a really nice mix. The biggest songs on this album were Technologic, Robot Rock, and Human After All. Whilst the duo kept their robotic personas, the theme changed for the album and became much more of a colour-washed, black and white aesthetic with their now iconic leather jackets. They would embark on a huge live tour between 2006 and 2007, playing a mega mix of their greatest hits in front of a giant LED pyramid. And as well as this massive tour they did, they also released their second live album, Alive 2007. And let me just say that this album, for those people that listen to live music, is, I think, one of my favourite live albums ever. It just sounds on point, and I don't know, I mean, I feel pretty jealous I wasn't there, but it's a great live album if you ever get the chance to listen to it. At the very least, I would implore you to go on YouTube and look up some clips of the actual show itself, because the actual pyramid and the light show and everything they do is really, really impressive. And, well, no wonder, as during this time in 2007, they actually received a Grammy for the song Better, Harder, Faster, Stronger, which was released and, well, people loved it. This was really just a sign of the fact that these guys were getting pretty dang good at what they do. And to top this era off, the band released a second film called Daft Punk's Electroma, released at the Cannes Film Festival. Whilst this movie isn't really associated with the music as such, this project was more of a look into the robot duo and their struggles to try and become human. Remember this scene, folks, as it plays a much bigger part later in this video. Spoilers guys, this gets pretty explosive. Tron Legacy, the album released by Daft Punk in conjunction with their partnership with Disney, and the release of Tron Legacy in 2010 was released all about the same time. Hey, I mean, they even make a cameo in the movie. That's pretty cool. This was also the time that the duo were invited to the 50th Grammy Awards, and they collaborated with, of all people, Kanye West, would you never guess, to release a remix which is pretty iconic. I mean, I'm not the biggest Kanye fan, but when Daft Punk are involved, they make anything sound good. And hell, they worked with The Weeknd, so, you know. Really, at this point, the band were in the big leagues. They could do pretty much whatever they wanted to. Nobody was going to stop them. I mean, they're Daft Punk for crying out loud. They could work with anyone and make it sound great. Then we have the band's 2013 album, Random Access Memories, which, the lead single, Get Lucky, I think I played 3,000 times in a row when it first came out. And if you ask my flatmate at the time, he would throttle me because of the fact I'd play that song so often. Even now, he gets pretty pissed off, which makes it one of my favourite songs. At the 56th Annual Grammy Awards, Random Access Memories won the Grammy for the Best Dance and Electronica Album, Album of the Year and Best Engineered Album Non-Classical, whilst Get Lucky received the Grammy for Best Pop Duo and Group Performance and another Grammy for Record of the Year. Daft Punk performed at the ceremony with Stevie Wonder, Nile Rodgers and Pharrell Williams, amongst others in their eye-catchingly white overalls. This is all cool, although it's pretty sad because we're reaching the end, and anyone that knows Daft Punk knows where this is going, but we're not quite there yet, folks. We've got a little bit more to go. Yes, we also have the collaborative projects that they were involved with in 2017 with primarily The Weeknd, where they made the singles Starboy and I Feel It Coming, arguably the two best songs that The Weeknd's ever written, because Daft Punk were involved, but I digress from the point. These songs, of course, became chart-topping mega singles in their own right. They also did a few other projects like a pop-up memorabilia store in California and announced an art exhibition in 2019. But as far as music was concerned, the band was pretty low-key at this time. Despite having now topped the charts globally, including the US Billboard charts, this was a new frontier for Daft Punk. Then, the video released. That one video which every Daft Punk fan, head in hands, the one that made me feel like I'd just got the phone call to say a relative had died. A video released on their YouTube channel on the 22nd of February 2021, named Epilogue. A video showing clips from the finale of the band's previously made film, Electroma. Yeah, you know, the one with the exploding robots. And then this showed at the end of the video. Shortly after that, a post was released later that day by Daft Punk's longtime publicist, Catherine Fraser, confirming that the duo had indeed split up, but they gave no reason. The news led to a surge in Daft Punk sales, with digital album purchases rising by 2,650%. 'Cause why not? Better late than never, I guess. And, well, aside from a few social media posts and something on Twitch that one time, nothing else has really come of the band. I mean, this almost seems like the end. And the worst and sad thing about everything is you go on their Wikipedia page and you see that it says Daft Punk were a band, not are a band. I mean, yes, it's sad for anything like that to happen, but what I think hurts more is the fact that I've never got to see them live, and you know what? I'd be fine not seeing them live, but you know what? If you want to come back and play one more time and then give me tickets to go, then that'll be pretty cool too. However, yes, I do understand why the band probably did this. I mean, the pair have been doing this since the early 90s, and in the 30 years, they've probably figured that this is probably a good time to wind down, or even try their hand at some other endeavours along the way outside of that of Daft Punk. Sad, but understandable. And that, for now at least, is the legacy of Daft Punk. And for those of you who are already fans of heavy metal music in general, you probably already know who this strange character is. But for the uninitiated, oh boy, you're in for a wild ride today. Get ready for guitar shredders and shredded chicken. The best two things I could possibly think of at that one time. So let's get to the bare bones of the matter, shall we? Who the hell is this person? And why are they wearing a bucket of KFC on their head? Brian Patrick Carroll is an American musician, songwriter and multi-instrumentalist, acclaimed for his guitar playing and collaborating with some of music's biggest names such as Iggy Pop, Serj Tankian, Bootsy Collins, and for a time was even a member of the band Guns N' Roses when Axl and his Merry Men toured and performed. He has also been able to dip his toes into the world of film, writing, performing music for films such as Jaws 2, Mortal Kombat, Beverly Hills, Last Action Hero, and of course was the musician who played the lead guitar in the almighty track for the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie, Firebird. This man is not only incredibly talented, but also very busy, because at the time of recording this video, he has recorded, and I shit you not, 325 albums. Yes, I'm going to repeat that once more. This artist has made 325 albums. Busy, busy guy. I just can't think of anyone who has the time to be able to do that, let alone make albums which are actually good, rather than just doing anything. Yes, so that is a bit of a background as to what this guy does in his day-to-day life. But I know what you're asking, and of course it's because it's in the title of the video, what's with the getup? What's with the bucket? What's with the mask? It's all a bit strange. Well, let me tell you. Otherwise known as Buckethead, this artist performs wearing a KFC bucket on his head, with an orange bumper sticker slapped on the side reading Funeral. And of course, the white mask inspired by Halloween 4: The Return of Michael Myers. So yeah, truly an outstanding character. On first impression, probably not so much for his skill, but mainly because in a row of musicians, he's the one that's going to stand out for being a little bit different than what you'd expect. The story given on the official Buckethead origin story was that he was raised by chickens and one day these chickens attacked Buckethead, scarring his face. And in order to hide his disfigured face, he would hide away from the world behind a white mask. A mask which just so happened to be the same mask on the film of Halloween 4, but that's besides the point. So he would spend his days in the chicken coop and would go and spy on horror films that were being showed at a local drive-through theatre, and occasionally playing guitar at the same time, honing his skills. The reason for the chicken, however, on the head is a little bit stranger, however, as apparently one day a bucket of KFC chicken was thrown into the chicken coop. A Buckethead, seeing the bucket, felt sorry for the chicken and tried to piece it back together. But there's only so many times that you can try and piece back together a deep fried chicken. So, unsuccessful, he decided to wear the bucket on his head as a show of respect for his lost brethren. The chicken that was just made into a KFC zinger meal. To cement his legacy, a ballad was written by Les Claypool and Buckethead himself, which reads as follows. He was born in a coop, raised in a cage. Children fear him, critics rage. He's half alive, he's half dead. Folks just call him Buckethead. So yeah, that was the apparent official version of how he came to be, how Buckethead became Buckethead. That's all well and good, and honestly I don't know really what you expected, but in Guitar Player magazine in 1996, Buckethead had an interview and he explained what was probably the actual reason as to how he became Buckethead? Well, surprisingly, there was no real deep meaning, from what I can tell anyway. In 1998, he would watch the 1998 movie Halloween 4 and would be inspired to go out and buy the actual mask he saw on the screen. This must have been pretty impactful for him to go out and buy the same mask he'd seen in the movie. But this clearly wasn't enough, as something else so profound would happen on the same evening. That he was sat at home alone eating a bucket of KFC. I was eating it, and I put the mask on and then the bucket on my head. I went to the mirror, I just said, Buckethead. That's Buckethead right there. And it was just one of those things. After that, I wanted to be that thing all the time. So, if you wanted to become a professional musician, most people would go for something which they would consider professional, something which isn't quite as absurd as wearing a mask and a bucket of KFC chicken, which is not the first thing I would think of when I think of a professional musician. However, when you listen to him play, I think when you consider what someone is as a professional musician, he's near the top of the damn list. You need to listen to him. This guy is incredibly talented. As a matter of fact, many people have even gone on record to say that they believe Buckethead is one of the most skilled guitar players of a generation, which is a bold statement to say. Buckethead would enter into a number of competitions, including Guitar Player magazine, in which Brian would get the runners-up spot, with the editor for the magazine themselves saying the following: "An astonishingly skilled guitarist and bassist, he demonstrates post-Paul Gilbert speed and accuracy, filtered through very kinky harmonic sensibilities. His psychotronic demonic edge is very, very far removed from the cliches of classical metal and rock. A real talent to watch, also known as Buckethead." He would go on to play with a number of different bands, including an audition in 1993 to replace John Frusciante in the Red Hot Chili Peppers. So you must think that you're pretty good at playing guitar if you're able to go up and make an audition for a band like that. As I mentioned before, Buckethead has a stellar track record, working with music's biggest artists, producing iconic pieces of music, and generally being able to work in many different styles and genres, from rock, metal, jazz, ambient tones, bluegrass, you name it. Whilst Buckethead has got many fingers in many pies, he always goes back to the fact that he loves playing music for his fans. That is pretty much his number one goal. The guitar shredder is so well in tune with his guitar, in fact, he actually dubbed a new way to play guitar called nubbing. And I mean, it's hard for me to explain it, so I'm just going to show you a clip here. Being able to tap his fingers on the front of the fretboard like that with such quick succession creates such a unique sound, and it's something which he's carried forward into a lot of his music. It's hard for me to explain how talented this guy actually is, and I know that a lot of people who saw this video for the first time and may not know who Buckethead is thought that he was just a crazy guy. I mean, he probably is, but don't let that detract away from the fact that he actually makes really good music. And really, all I can suggest is after this video, go and listen to some of it. And some personal recommendations from me, if you've never heard him before, is to go ahead and listen to Soothsayer, Whitewash and Final Wars. And that is Buckethead, in some shape or form. And for anyone that knows me, I would happily throw my hard-earned money at some music festival so I can go and stand in a rainy field for 5 days with a cold pint in my hand and listen to some random band play music that I've never heard of before. That sounds like a great time. So yeah, music festivals are great. So why not talk about one of the world's most well-known and most infamous festivals of all, Woodstock. Just a quick history lesson, Woodstock Music and Art Fair, commonly referred to as just Woodstock, was a music festival held between the 15th and the 18th of August 1969 on a dairy farm in Bethel, New York. 32 musical acts played the 3-day festival to the delight of music fans. Despite the rain that came down, it was considered an important moment in music history. The weekend had acts such as The Who, The Grateful Dead, Jimi Hendrix and Santana. This hippie free-loving movement was in direct contradiction to much of the world's politics at the time in the late 60s and early 70s, including the fact that the United States were involved in a very controversial war in Vietnam. Yes, like I said, there was a lot going on in the world at the time, and this just had such a cultural impact and was really an important moment in musical history. Hundreds of thousands of people gathered on this one farm to enjoy a weekend of music. Well, I'd be lying if I said that it was all sunshines and rainbows. As a matter of fact, more people remember this festival because of how chaotic it was than the actual fact that there was bands and music playing there for 3 days. Given the fact that the festival was called Woodstock, it wasn't even held in the town of Woodstock. It was held in the next town over due to the fact that Woodstock wouldn't issue the festival organisers a permit for their festival. That's where a 49-year-old dairy farmer called Max Yazga granted them access to his 600-acre farm to put on the musical event of a lifetime. So yeah, this all sounds cool. They have a nice place for a fun festival. And originally they charged $18 a ticket, and they estimated about 50,000 people would turn up. That's not quite what happened, because by the time the festival was starting, they hadn't quite managed to put all the fencing up, meaning that thousands of ticketless punters arrived and walked straight into the festival without paying a penny. So things got busy pretty quickly. So yeah, no wonder festival security these days is so high. You have these big festivals these days that erect giant walls and fences that are impossible to climb to try and prevent the fact that if many people come when it's being unaccounted for, health and safety is a big issue. It is estimated that the festival had an additional 200,000 people enter the festival without purchasing a ticket and being unaccounted for. In the end, it was estimated that there may have been upwards of 500,000 people in the festival site. That is a lot of people. This mass of people resulted in there being approximately 800 people to every toilet on site, causing huge queues, backlogs in the sewage on site, and created even more mud on an already rainy festival weekend. Food vendors would run up food prices and even looked at price gouging to quadruple the price of a hot dog. Festival goers, upset by this capitalist greed, resorted to burning down the tents that decided to try and do this. And yes, aside from the music, this is the kind of place that you would fully expect drugs, sex and rock and roll. And I can assure you that particularly the drugs was quite a prominent factor, as I can't imagine many places where more narcotics weren't taken in a single weekend than ever before. Things started getting so out of hand, in fact, that over the intercoms, the festival organisers even had to ask people nicely to get down from the poles they were climbing due to the fact that there were risks of lightning strikes. So that would probably have not gone down well if a festival punter got shot by lightning on site. I've been to festivals before, I've been to some pretty crazy ones, but nothing quite like this. The festival did also have a darker side as well. The rampant drug use resulted in the deaths of 3 people at the festival, 2 of which were presumed by overdose, and another who was crushed by a tractor whilst they were sleeping. Truly awful. Nobody wants to hear this sort of thing happen in a place where this is meant to be such carefree and a fun-loving weekend. The event was chaotic, but the chaos also made it iconic, and it ended up being the subject of a feature-length documentary the following year in 1970, simply named Woodstock, which captured the very spirit and the highlights of the performances that weekend. When the following year came round, owner of the farm, Max Yazga, refused to allow a revival of the festival, stating that as far as he was concerned, he was going to go back and run his farm as a dairy farm. And you know what, with everything that happened the year before, I kinda don't blame the guy. If it was me, I'd just want to go back and be a dairy farmer. You know, go back to the simple life. Approximately 80 lawsuits were filed against Woodstock Ventures, who set up and ran the festival, primarily by farmers in the area. The documentary that was made financed many of the settlements and paid out approximately $1.4 million of debt, which is approximately $10.3 million today. This was an expensive venture which almost financially ruined the organisers, and if it wasn't for them asking filmmakers to go and document the whole experience, this could have ended in a very different way. So yeah, whilst Woodstock would never ever be held at the actual original site ever again, this was certainly a pivotal moment and was absolutely a time to remember. As a matter of fact, this place had such a cultural impact that although the festival has never been held there again, in 1984 a monument was set up to commemorate the site of the original festival, which I think is pretty cool. This event was so iconic in fact that music events bearing the Woodstock name were originally planned on anniversaries, which included the 10th, 20th, 25th, 30th, 40th and 50th years. While a number of them never materialised due to the landowner not wanting to return to the festival, among the other financial and legal troubles, I imagine the second iteration of the festival, quote unquote, officially means that this was the 25th anniversary, which was held in 1994. This festival was a bit more established, more prepared and sold tickets at $135, a little bit more corporate than the previous free-spirited mind there was before. And yes, whilst it was much more controlled than before, there were people that still managed to break their way into the event, and whilst it wasn't quite as bad as last time, it was still a prevalent thing. Bands and artists that performed included, at the time, young versions of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Green Day, Nine Inch Nails, Metallica, Primus and Cypress Hill. People wanted more, and after that, another event was planned and held in the year 1999. And, well, the fact that, of course, the first year was always going to have its problems, the second year seemed to go off a little bit better, surely the third year was going to go off even better. The bar had been set, and they just needed to make it even bigger and better than it ever was before. Problem with that is that expectations are high, and people go to this legendary festival thinking that it's going to be something amazing. Too bad that the 1999 year for Woodstock was infamous for all the wrong reasons. This event was held in upstate New York at a place called Rome, a place about 100 miles from the original festival site. 400,000 people descended across the site for 4 days. Festival organisers erected a giant 12-foot plywood and steel fence to keep people out of the event. But the wall was breached on a Saturday night, where many of the festival goers simply flooded into the site without tickets. This resulted in new state police troopers having to be called in as additional security for the event. There were also a few other issues due to the fact that there was an extreme heatwave going on at the time, and some of the bands that played encouraged the crowd to go a little bit crazier than perhaps they should have done. One band in particular was the performance from Limp Bizkit, where frontman Fred Durst might have said a few things to rile up the crowd, and yes, I know that these concerts are a little bit, jumpy, rocky, moshy, but there's a point where you have to be a little bit careful. I mean, if someone falls down or is going to get injured, you stop. You do not encourage that. But hey, if he's up there and he doesn't see it and he keeps going, who knows what could happen. During the set for the Red Hot Chili Peppers, a vigil was set up during their hit song Under the Bridge, which got out of hand when people started creating bonfires. And after the Chili Peppers were just about finished with their main set, the audience was informed about a bit of a problem that had caused when an audio tower caught fire, and the fire department had to be called to extinguish it. That night would descend into violence, with ATMs being tipped over, burglaries on vendor booths, and there were even reports of sexual violence and harassment in which the local police had to investigate these after the event. And yes, there was quite a lot of things that did happen. I've kind of gone over it on a very, very surface level here, but the general outcome was that at the end of this festival, it kind of tarnished the reputation of Woodstock. And yes, whilst some smaller iterations of the festival may have come and gone, there wasn't really any more Woodstock after that. That event kind of ruined it for everyone. People have been talking about whether they're going to bring it back, whether it's going to be coming back for a new anniversary. Who knows? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But all we know is that if we want to go back and look at the previous history, there's a lot to learn here. And whilst it is considered a legendary festival, there's lessons, and I think if they're going to do anything like this again, they need to be very, very prepared. If you like the video, be sure to like and subscribe. If you want to be notified as soon as I upload my next video, be sure to hit the bell button. And if you've got any ideas for what topics you'd like to discuss next, let me know down in the comments below. As always, sources used in the video will be in the description. There was so much to talk about in this video that on the first draft of the script, I even had to go through and cut a lot of it out, because I'd kind of be going over ground that I've already discussed or talking about things which kind of just backs up the same points I've already made. Many instances of just chaos that went on. I'm sure if you're interested, you can go and find out more details about it. And yes, whilst these festivals were quite chaotic in the various iterations it came through, I think it's easy to be a bit blindsided by all that kind of stuff and then forget about what the festival actually was. And I think for the vast majority of people, they will walk away from that weekend with fond memories and a great experience that they'll never forget. The summer of '69, 3 days of peace and music. I'll see you guys in the next video. Fantastic.